What's up, folks? Today is, what is today? It's February. I know what month it is. Thursday, February 11th. Today's a snow day, so I didn't get to see you in person. So we're doing this on YouTube. Here we go. Today's lecture would have been on We Have Always Lived in the Castle, chapters 5 and 6. I am going to truncate it somewhat so that you can sit through it. I'm hard enough to listen to in person, and so online I can't even imagine. So I'm going to try to be real about attention spans today. Let's go. So we got our four main characters, right? We got Uncle Julian. We've got Sister Connie. We've got Charles Blackwood now. Cousin Charles is in the mix. He shows up at the end of chapter 4, and he's there at the beginning of chapter 5. And of course, everyone's favorite sociopath, Mary Cat, or Mary Katherine, our narrator. Page 477. I'm on, if you're on the printed copy, I'm on page 477. If you're on the e-text, I'll just say the beginning of chapter 5. Mary Cat wakes up, and as we saw with Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson seems to enjoy morning time. It's this big refresh, a big reset button. If you recall, Eleanor Vance in We Have Always Lived in Haunting of Hill House, she wakes up refreshed, she's excited about her day, and that's pretty weird considering that she was up all night getting haunted by ghosts. And so you see something similar here, not quite that crazy, but there is a level of, can we say, delusion with Mary Cat. Mary Cat is not known for being particularly sane, and she's not here. There's like a fluff back there. Okay, so what am I talking about? Mary Cat, she pretends as if Charles isn't there, and she goes about her morning just like in this sort of delusional la-la land where, if step on a crack, break your mother's back kind of weird thinking that she always does. If I nail this book to this tree, then I'll be protected. If I bury this box of coins, then that will create a protective shell around our house. All this weird like voodoo witch stuff that, this isn't a magical book. Nothing ever works. She's just kind of off her rocker. So that's how we begin book 5 in sort of this delusion denial state from Mary Katherine. Charles Blackwood is very much there, though he's sleeping in on this morning. When Connie says on page 477, Cousin Charles is still asleep. What's Mary Cat's reaction? She tells us, I could not breathe. I was tied around tight. Everything was cold. It's like, he's still there. It's like the reality dawning on her is like it's like a straitjacket. Which like she kind of needs maybe. This is anxiety inducing. She doesn't want him to be there. She does not like this guy very much at all. As we said, what does Mary Cat want? She wants control. She does not want change. Okay, she wants things to be just as they are. Constance, her sister, is the only person on earth she likes. She puts up with Uncle Julian. And anything that's going to threaten that relationship is bad. And Charles is going to threaten that relationship. So what does she do? What does Mary Cat do feeling all wound round tight, everything so cold? She says this on page 478. I took my glass and smashed it on the floor. Now he'll go away, I said. As if this is some kind of like spell casting, or like her childish acting out is gonna be effectual in some way. This is classic Mary Cat stuff. She thinks that if she acts out, things will change. She thinks that if she acts out, things will change. Okay, let's keep that in the back of our heads. So what's Connie's reaction to this? Okay, Connie's a grown woman. She's 28 years old, we learn. Mary Cat tells us on page 1 that she's 18, so there's a 10-year difference. between these two young ladies. How does Connie react to like, hey, how about don't smash our stuff? No, she doesn't even say anything about it. The only thing Connie says on page 478 is, ooh, I'd better sweep up that broken glass before he comes down. There's absolutely no reproach in this relationship. Okay, it's Connie never says this out loud. Mary Kat never says this out loud. But Connie is not allowed to criticize Mary Kat in any way. There is a little bit of a dawning, which we'll get to for Connie later. But there's it slowly and steadily. Shirley Jackson is revealing that this relationship is nuts. Okay, if you're in a friendship, a marriage, whatever, you name it, parents and child, and like parent and child is a little bit different. A parent obviously needs to be able to criticize a child. A child's insight toward a parent, if he's just a little kid, not as useful. But if one person is not allowed to criticize the other, like ever, that's going to be a problem. People like me, you're going to find a lot of people like me in this world who are screwed up, who have issues, who are not perfect. People need criticism sometimes. I like my friends need to smack me in the face a little bit here and there. What does the Bible say about this? Trust wounds from a friend, but an enemy multiplies flattery. This is Proverbs. That's not exactly how it goes, but the thought is there. Trust wounds from a friend, an enemy will multiply flattery. Okay, if somebody's only telling you something good, at some point you need to scratch your head and say, "You buttering me up for a reason?" Okay, if you're an intelligent person, you're going to ask yourself this. Okay, so where are we? Connie never says to Mary Kat straight out, "You need to change. You're a psychopath." So that's something we need to be aware of, be paying attention to. Uncle Julian. So what's up with Uncle Julian? He comes down on this morning. Charles is still not up yet, and Julian says he's talking about his book. This is his one big project in life. All he does is eat and sleep. He's basically fed and taken care of by Connie because he's an invalid. Okay, he can't do things for himself. He's mentally, not just physically, but like mentally, sort of, very much diminished ever since the fateful day of the poisoning. Bum bum bum. So Julian says of his books to his nieces, I shall commence, I think. He's starting a new chapter. I shall commence, I think, with a slight exaggeration and go on from there into an outright lie. What's up with this guy, right? Like, he's talking about his whole thing is he really, really wants to get the details right, and then he comes out and says this, I'm going to lie in this book today. I'm going to start with an exaggeration, and then I'm going to morph it into a lie. So, like, you need to be asking yourself, like, what the heck is this project he's on about writing this memoirs of the day of the poisoning? Like, what's his goal? This is a question I want you to be asking yourself. Is if he like, does he want to get it right? Sometimes he says to people he interviews, I'm like, we have to get everything right. And then he turns around and says, you know what, I'm going to exaggerate this here. And there I'm just going to straight up lie. Like, what is it what is driving him to this one project? Why does he seem to be reliving this one day, as Connie will say, as she gets her moment of clarity again at the end of chapter 6, we'll get there. She realizes for a second that, like, Connie realizes that Uncle Julian is just, like, stuck in this weird repetition. And is it true? Is it false? Is it a lie? Is it the truth? Sometimes he seems to care, sometimes he doesn't. So what's going on with him? Something to be thinking about as you continue reading. Charles' answer to this comes a few pages later. Finally, he yells himself out of bed. He comes downstairs. He wants some breakfast. He's a little slow to eat the breakfast. Why might that be? He's a little hesitant, but it's like, you took the time to, like, come to this house. Like, maybe, Charles, you should have decided beforehand whether you're going to eat their food or not. Why would he be hesitant? Of course, the poisoning issue. Does he want to eat their food? He finally does eat the pancakes after Connie sort of says to him, you ate dinner here last night, didn't you? Like, still alive after So, anyway, Charles says to Uncle Julian straight out, can't it all be forgotten? There's no point in keeping those memories alive. Okay? Now remember, you're working toward a paper about memory. You're going to pick one of these four characters and talk about their relationship with the past, how they remember things, why they remember things or don't. Okay? So we're getting different attitudes. Chapter 5 and 6, I think, are going to be important for a lot of people for this paper. Okay? Maybe worth rereading if you're going to dog ear a couple pages. Chapters 5 and 6 may want to come back to. Okay. Can't it all be forgotten? Charles says. There's his attitude. Who cares about that? Moving forward. I'm going to take my risks. I'm going to eat your food. Hopefully, better things will come around along. Let's not think about all this death. And how do we feel about Charles? We don't care for Charles very much. First of all, even though Mary Cat is like a grade A bona fide sociopath, she's still the narrator, and readers have soft spots in their hearts for narrators. So I think we are inclined as readers to have some sympathy for any crazy narrator. I think Edgar Allan Poe discovered this, and Shirley Jackson's going to run with it. We are inclined to like a narrator just because the fact that we know them the best. And so her distaste for Charles, I think, becomes our distaste. And Charles really does nothing to dispel that distaste. Okay, what does he do? What does Charles care about? I've told you before. If you're trying to understand a character, if you're trying to understand a story, what you really need to understand is, what does this person want? Okay, what are their desires? It's not that's an oversimplification, but it's a helpful one, I think, sometimes. St. Augustine thought that the most definitional aspect of a person wasn't their past, wasn't their future, wasn't their talents or abilities, it was their desires. If you know what a person wants, then you know who that person is, thought Augustine, and I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that. So what does Charles want? He's an open book, okay? He's as obvious as he seems. He cares about cashola. He's about the money, okay? He is all about the money. And how do we know this? Because Mary Cat and Connie are so careless about money. Okay, they can afford to be because they're rich. They're careless about money. We will see in chapter 6 that the gold watch chain becomes an issue. What's the story with that? You recall that Mary Cat takes their dead father's golden watch chain and hammers it to a tree. And this is one of her weird spell things that, again, this is not a magic story. It doesn't do anything. Just destroys the watch chain. Charles gets upset about that, and it's well, our sympathies might be with the main character. Charles is kind of a dip, but he's right. He's right. Mary Cat's just destroying jewelry. Is that what we're doing? What's the point of that? That doesn't seem very wise or good. In fact, it seems wasteful. It seems bad. Okay. But Charles, his character, he seems as money obsessed, as greedy as his late uncle, the girl's father, used to be. Okay, so there are patterns in this family. The guys, the men seem to be sort of cut and paste, versions of each other. So, Charles, can't it all be forgotten? Mary Cat is coming to grips with him or not, but she is, with Charles being there or not. And by that I mean devising plans to not come to grips with him, devising plans to get him out of there. And one of her plans is she makes this deal with herself. She's all about weird deals. She makes this deal with herself. If Charles had not gone away before 3 days, I would smash the mirror in the hall. Okay. So she's planning on acting out further. You'll recall last class I mentioned that when did the big tragedy of their lives happen? It's 6 years ago. So if she's 18 now, she would have been 12. It's she got to age 12, the tragedy happens, and she's like Arrested Development. She's stuck there permanently. Okay. Interesting, the idea of being stuck in the past. That's the second time that's come up. That might be useful to your papers. Okay. Now, obviously, you're going to dig deeper than I'm digging here, but maybe that's some fodder for you to go off of. I hope that's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to smash the mirror if she doesn't leave. Charles, what does he do? He offers to you see what he's doing? He's sort of starting to replace Mary Cat. He's trying to replace Mary Cat. What do I mean by that? He's going to go into town. He's going to do the shopping. He's going to do what she used to do. And it's like, hey, at one point he suggests, Mary Cat, like, ever think about having a boyfriend? Like, let's get her out of the house, is clearly what's going on. In the back of Charles's mind, he is not subtle or sly in any way. He's pretty clearly trying to become the man of this house, which is a little weird when you consider who the woman of the house is going to be, like his cousin. Constance, like, doesn't seem super appropriate. And so, like, another tick against good old Charles is that he seems to want their money, and he seems to want to, like, play house in a really creepy way. There's nothing overtly sexualized about his relationship with Connie, but if you think about it for a minute, like what's his end game? He seems to want to be the man of the house, and again, Connie, the woman of the house. They're cousins, about the same age. That should strike you as creepy. This guy is meant to come off creepy. Okay. So Charles offers to do the shopping. He offers to fix the broken step out back. We'll see if he gets to that or not. He doesn't. But he's trying to make himself useful or appear to be useful. Okay, if there's a difference between Charles Blackwood and the girl's dad, is that the girl's dad at least was useful, seems to have, been able to hold on to money and make it and hold on to it. Okay, the other men aren't so good at that. Uncle Julian, not so good at that. Okay. Well, on page 490, we pick up with chapter 6, and it's all to the moon. Okay, it's a meme right now, right? To the moon. Mary Cat's got all these plans to go visit the moon, to live there with Connie, to eat rose petals while they're up there. That's how they all get by. They'll eat rose petals when they're on the moon. And again, Connie, what is Connie's reaction to Mary Cat, whether she's smashing silverware or cookware or whatever, whether she's acting like a weird 12-year-old, not even a 12-year-old, but a weird one. Oh, you silly girl. Again, Connie is not allowed, the more we read, the more we see, Connie is criticizing Mary Cat in any serious way is off limits, can't do it. Why? Why can't we criticize Mary Cat? Okay. So I mentioned the watch chain. Here's the next big event that happens. Mary Cat takes it, runs off with it, and nails it to a tree. Charles finds it and gets upset, throws a fit, and come on, we don't like the guy. He's sleazy, he's greedy, maybe even lazy. But yeah, I mean, smashing jewelry for no reason, just destroying value for the sake of destroying value. How can that be virtuous in any way? And he is not afraid to criticize Mary Cat for all Mary Cat's shenanigans, which are very much real. So this interaction happens. Nobody's happy, and it's finally on page 494. Mary Cat finally has the idea, you know what? I'm going to ask him to leave, okay? Mary Cat finally has this sort of like, maybe I won't smash a glass, maybe I won't smash a mirror or break things. I'm just going to ask him to go. Okay. Which he does, and he says, which he doesn't, he says no. Shocker. Now, so there's sort of almost this moment of something like sanity for Mary Cat. Like, she really, really doesn't seem to care about what people think of her. She seems fine being seen as crazy as she is. This never, like, doesn't bug her in any way, doesn't seem to. But she's like, even still, she's remarkably shy at times. She's remarkably like, she avoids conflict nonetheless. Um, uh, so she gets this, anyway, weird moment of, I'm just going to say the thing I want. Like, I'm going to act like a grown-up for 5 seconds and communicate with my mouth what it is that I want. In a healthy relationship, you can communicate with your mouth. Tell someone, use your words, as I tell my toddler. Say what you want. The other person might say no, but you can say what you want. That's a grown-up thing. Okay. So she gets this moment of grown-up thing. It goes nowhere. And then what I'm really concerned with, though, is Connie's moment of brief and fleeting moment of clarity. I'm always, before I get to this, by the way, I'm always interested in the craziness of sane people or the stupidity of wise people. It always interests me. Like, foolish people are going to be foolish. Crazy people are going to be crazy. Mary Katz, is who I'm talking about here. Uncle Julian, same thing. But characters who seem to have their stuff together or who seem sane mostly, the craziness of those people, what do I mean by craziness of those people? The irrationality of those people in predictable patterns, that always interests me. So we're gonna see this right now with Constance, who is the closest thing to a rational, decent human being we seem to have, but with these sort of subtle faults. Whereas Charles's faults are obvious. Uncle Julian's faults are obvious. Mary Katz's flaws are very obvious. Connie seems to not be able to criticize her sister. Like, okay, like you can sort of live and move and be in the world and be afraid to criticize people. It's still not great. Like, you want to be able to, not be a jerk, but at least like suggest like, hey, it looks like we have a problem with X. Can we talk about X? And if you're not able to do that, like, something to look at, right? Something I've had to look at. I don't like conflict. I don't want to be that guy. Well, this is a problem for Connie too, and she says this. She has this moment of clarity, page 494. She's talking about Charles, and Connie says, he's only trying to keep Uncle Julian from thinking about sad things all the time. She's defending Charles. He's only trying to keep Uncle Julian from thinking about sad things all the time. And I agree with him. And by the way, I kind of agree with him. Anyway, Connie says, I agree with him. Uncle Julian should be cheerful. And then she says, I've been hiding here, Constance said slowly. I have let Uncle Julian spend all his time living in the past and particularly reliving that one dreadful day. I have let you, Mary Cat she's talking to, I've let you run wild. How long has it been since you combed your hair? And then the next page, Connie says, it's all been my fault. And this is going to be a refrain. It's all my fault. Okay? Reminiscences of Eleanor. It's all my fault. Okay. We have these characters. We have characters in Shirley Jackson who are never responsible for anything. And then we have characters in Shirley Jackson who are always responsible for everything. And sometimes it's a weird mix of both. Responsibility for things that they are not responsible for and irresponsibility where they should be responsible. Okay, so it goes with, excuse me. Again, this time with Connie. She does want to take, I think rationally, some concern for Julian, who she says should be in a hospital. And for his sister, who shouldn't be allowed to, be sort of this, like, free range to the max child who can't be told no. But then she takes this leap from like, I need to start taking responsibility, and it's like Connie, I hate to agree with you, but you're kind of right. She tips a little bit, and then she goes all the way. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Like, anybody like this? Anybody like this who's like, everything is always my fault all the time. It's always my fault. I'm sure you know people for whom everything is never their fault. Have you ever met someone for whom everything is always their fault? Okay. I know someone like this. I'm very close to someone like this. I'm in the same room as someone like this, even now. Why is that? Why should someone like me, want to pile up responsibility, want to pile up guilt, want to pile up burden on himself. What do I get out of that? Think about that. What if Connie or Eleanor from the previous novel, if they're piling up all this shame, unearned responsibility, over responsibility for the way things are unto themselves, like everything's got a purpose. Everything people do, they do for reasons. Even if those reasons are like flawed and like the logic is weird, like there's always a logic, or an illogic. There's always a reason, okay? So I think the reason, all the time, and I don't want to say all the time, some of the time I think the reason for that might be, if it's all my fault, that means I should be in control, or I could have been in control, okay? The reality is even worse than that, okay? It's less painful for me to tell myself, like, I should have been in control, I could have been in control, I ought to have done something wrong, so guilty, so, like piling on that guilt is less painful, I think, than owning up to the facts, which are, it was never under my control, okay? I didn't do anything wrong, and the bad thing still happened. That stinks. That stinks. I did nothing wrong, and tragedy still struck. I'd rather tell myself, it would be easier for me to just say to myself, this was avoidable. Even if I didn't avoid it, it was avoidable. I had some measure of control over my fate or my destiny. Because thinking the opposite, that I had no control over a certain outcome, that I was going to get cancer no matter what, and it wasn't my fault, like, that, that is rough. That's worse for some people than the guilt, okay? So the delusion of guilt is that, I think, in some people's case, and I think in Connie's case, the delusion of guilt where it doesn't really belong, the exaggeration of guilt where it doesn't belong, is easier to deal with than looking at the reality of the situation, which is life is painful and you are not in control of everything that happens to you. Who wants to believe that, right? We're in America. This is, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, be strong and in charge and make decisions and be in control. And it's like, well, life's just not like that all the time. That's hard to admit. So I think Connie is doing that thing, that she is, it's easier for her, it's an easier pill to swallow that she did something wrong to cause everything than that she did everything right and everything went wrong. What am I talking about? The death of everyone in her family, that everything went wrong anyway. Okay, have I beaten that horse enough? Then the end of chapter 6, and we'll end here. What does Charles say? Connie's playing the harp, and it's this nice, beautiful thing, and they're all sitting around listening to the harp because it's like the internet wasn't going to be invented for many years, and there was no Netflix. So they're listening to Connie play the harp, and Charles says, "Well, that's great," and he dismisses Uncle Julian, who he straight up pretty much has total disdain for Uncle Julian because Uncle Julian is kind of a weird kook. That's another thing we hate in characters. We readers, we don't like to see people treating, whenever any character treats someone lower on the totem pole, okay, socioeconomic totem pole, cut any way you want to cut that, as anyone treats an inferior person as expendable or worthless. Readers hate that, and that, of course, is exactly what Charles is doing. His uncle is an old kook, and he has total disdain for his uncle, and that just really, speaks to Charles' lack of character. Well, in the very end here, he dismisses his uncle and he says, "We've got plans to make." So what's Charles doing there? He's speaking for Connie's desires. Okay, like Connie, we've got plans to make. Constance and I want to talk. Okay, putting desires, putting wants in Connie's mouth. Like, Connie didn't say that. Like, Charles thinks she wants to talk. Connie never said that. So we've got, again, this pattern of sort of this really controlling, dominating male figure. We never got to really see Connie and Mary Kat's dad in action. He's dead before the show starts, the book starts. But he seems to be of a piece with this Charles guy that he's going to dictate how the family goes. He's going to tell you what you need. He's going to tell you what you want. He's the man of the house. Okay, so we get something very much like toxic masculinity. If there is such a thing, here it is. When the sort of the man of the house becomes tyrant of the house. And I think, obviously not all male figures are tyrants, but here are a couple. Charles is fulfilling the same pattern as his uncle, their father, did. So, didn't end well for that guy. Let's see what happens to Charles. No spoilers. Okay, guys, so we will continue from there into chapter 7 and onward. 60 pages, I think, left in the book total. Hopefully I'll see you all on Tuesday. We'll see if it snows more. That's what I got for you today. I'm out. Peace.